I love Doctor Who so much. The idea of travelling in the TARDIS when I was younger was like an absolute dream of mine. I have been moved by the stories, both set in the past and the future. I've grown attached to different companions, and idolised the Doctors themselves. So today I thought I'd rank the new Who Doctors on a tier list to really deep dive all the different iterations, all the different incarnations, and see which was my favourite and which is my least favourite. Because I've rewatched the series a few times from start to almost finish, I'll get to that, but I've never really broken down my favourite to least favourite and why. So let's do that today. So 9 was my first Doctor, and I feel like your first Doctor is like your first Final Fantasy game. The one you start with is your favourite. You grow attached to it, you end up comparing all of the other ones to it, and it just sits really significantly in your heart. For reference, my first Final Fantasy was Final Fantasy X, and that remains the greatest game I have ever played to this day, and I genuinely think that's the greatest story ever told in media, but that is a story for a different video. Let's get back to Eccleston, number 9. He was my first Doctor, and for a long time, even after 11 and 12 came and went, 9 was my favourite. He was a bit rough, a little bit rugged, perfect at this sort of war-torn, conflicted character. He was flippant and fun at times, but damaged and emotionally raw at others. And he like seamlessly switched between the two, which is a real testament to Eccleston's acting. Like, he knocked it out of the park. And then of course we had Rose as a companion. She's not my favourite companion, but I do have a huge soft spot for her. Spoiler alert, if they didn't keep bringing her back over and over again, she maybe would have been one of my favourite companions. But I'll do more on that in another video. If you want me to rank the companions in a tier list video, I can definitely do that, so let me know in the comments if you want it. But honestly, I think Bad Wolf Bay, where she leaves the Doctor and he can't quite get the sentence out, that should have been her final tragic goodbye for good. Either way, the Eccleston era is great, and some of the episodes, honestly, The Empty Child, Bad Wolf, even Father's Day I thought was pretty good, at least in concept. Eccleston's single season really did have some bangers. It was touch and go with the writing and the villains in there at times. Like, the Slitheen did not really do it for me. But the show at that point was in its first season since its revival, so you can sort of give it the benefit of the doubt for being raw and still trying to find its feet. So look, I loved it so much, but, and there is a but, on rewatches as I've gotten older, I have to say Eccleston's seasons, or season because there was only one, doesn't exactly hold up as well as maybe Tennant's or Smith's seasons do. It still has the nostalgia, don't get me wrong, and some of the moments are still amazing, but the fact it doesn't hold up over time on rewatch after rewatch stops me putting Eccleston's era in the S tier, and instead puts it at a very, very, very high A. So David Tennant is the most popular Doctor, and for good reason. I mean, some of his companions, Rose, Martha, Donna, they're amazing characters, they give us amazing moments. And then you just think about the episodes, some of them are incredible, timeless classics. Blink, Turn Left, and The Waters of Mars, oh my god, I rewatched that recently, and it's just so good. Honestly, Tennant's stint as the Doctor is incredible. Plus, the reintroduction of the Master, I think John Sim does that so well. It's just all consistently so good. The romance with Rose steps up with Tennant compared to Eccleston, and you like fully buy into it at that point. And then the heartbreak of them being separated after all of that is so hard hitting. Like, this clip breaks me every time.
I love you.
Quite right. And I suppose it's my last chance to say it. Rose Tyler.
And then there's Martha, who I think gets a really hard time, honestly. She is one of my favourite companions. Not the favourite, but one of them. And she has some really excellent moments across the series. And then there's Donna. What can you say about Donna that hasn't already been said? I love hers and Ten's relationship so much. There are no words to say how much I love them. Nor are there words enough to describe how great David Tennant is in his role as the Doctor. Like, Eccleston had great range, as we've talked about, but so did Tennant. Some of his monologues. He is the oncoming storm, the bringer of darkness. But then he'll also flippantly just say Allons-y and run off like a giddy child. And it feels really comforting to watch a David Tennant episode with him as the Doctor. I mean, he's the most popular for a reason. He's obviously going S tier. Was that ever in doubt? So Matt Smith really grew on me in rewatches. When he first became the Doctor, I just sort of compared him to David Tennant, who had done so well for so long. And Matt Smith just didn't really live up to it for me. He was too childish, too removed from the Time War, not like gritty enough. But then I rewatched his seasons, and it's not that he wasn't close enough to the Time War, it's that he had matured from the Time War. Rather than having that sort of woe is me survivor's guilt attitude, he came to terms with the fact that he was responsible and he learnt from it, and his childish moments suddenly felt more poignant emotionally, you know, because they almost felt like a coping mechanism. I don't know if that makes sense or if that's how it was written, but that's kind of how it felt to me. And then with Matt Smith, we have to talk about Amy and Rory. Like, don't get me wrong, I love Clara. I had a huge crush on Clara when I was growing up watching it, but Amy and Rory are my favourite companions. Oh my god, and The Angels Take Manhattan destroyed me. I remember watching it at like 2 AM on my laptop in bed, sobbing. Like, I don't usually even cry at TV and film very much, but in The Angels Take Manhattan, I was sobbing, like ugly, gasping for air, panting, tears rolling down my face. I just broke from that episode because I love Amy and Rory so much, and losing them and the way Matt Smith handled it or didn't handle it. Oh, I'm going through it all again. Ugh. Anyway, some of the story arcs we had with Matt Smith's episodes as well were amazing. All the stuff with River, the stuff with the Silence, the crack in time. Oh my god, I remember at first thinking they were convoluted and overly complicated, but in the age of binging episodes online where you can just watch 6, 7, 8 in a short space of time, it's the same with how I feel about Lost. When it was week to week, it was a lot to try and keep up with, but now you can binge it. So much better to consume that way. At least the Matt Smith and the Pons arcs are. The Impossible Girl arc, all the stuff with Clara, not so much, just didn't quite hit for me. But honestly, after my first time watching, the Matt Smith era would have been probably in the B tier, but after rewatching, it's between A tier and S tier. It's not quite as surefire as David Tennant, but I think he is still an S tier Doctor. I really wanted to like Peter Capaldi. I loved the idea of the Doctor not being this really young, really handsome, sprightly character anymore, not looking as though they're in their prime of life, and the idea of him being older, meaning maybe he wouldn't flirt with everybody he comes across. Maybe people won't pine after him so much like they did with Matt Smith or David Tennant. And then it would give us a different dynamic for him and the people around him, and him and his companions. And I have to say, along those lines, I did like that Capaldi's Doctor was a bit ruder, a bit more grumpy, but overall, I just couldn't get into the Capaldi seasons. I tried so hard. And honestly, there are redeeming factors, like Clara with 12, I much prefer to Clara with 11. But I don't know if it was Capaldi's acting or Moffat's writing in those seasons, but I just didn't feel as into 12 stuff as I did with 10, 9, and 11. Why did I say it in that order? I just didn't buy into Capaldi as the Doctor. I didn't get a sense of how this new incarnation would explore different aspects of the Doctor that we've not seen before. And honestly, just not much from 12's stint feels memorable. I just didn't emotionally buy into any of it, you know? So with that being said, I think Capaldi is C tier. His dynamic with Clara is redeeming, and it certainly could have been worse. So C tier, and it's a shame because I know Peter Capaldi was such a huge fan of Doctor Who, so I wanted to love him in that role. I wanted it to be a success, but alas. Okay, Jodie. I have tried and tried and tried and tried to get through Jodie's stint as the Doctor, but I just can't. It's just such a slog. Like, I was genuinely so excited for Jodie Whittaker to be the Doctor, and for Chris Chibnall to write it as well, because I remember watching Broadchurch and loving it. So for them to be in charge of this show that I hold so dearly, especially after what I thought was quite a disappointing stint with Capaldi, God, I was over the moon. I had the highest hopes for it. But trying to watch Jodie's run felt like trying to wade through cement. Every episode was a fight and a struggle to get through, and I have tried 4 or 5 times to start her run from the beginning again, and I never make it to the end. And that's not to say that I think Jodie did badly. I think the writing for her seasons are terrible. The companions felt rushed and unestablished, to the point where I just didn't care about them at all. And Jodie's Doctor, from what I saw, kind of lacked identity. Like, Chibnall didn't know what kind of a Doctor he wanted to write her to be, and so she became nothing. Vapid, insipid, boring to watch. Like, I loved Jodie Whittaker in Broadchurch, in her episode of Black Mirror. She's a phenomenal actress, but I just think she was let down by Doctor Who. So for me, it has to be D tier, but God, I wish it wasn't. Let me know what you think of my opinions down in the comments. Please feel free to argue with me. And if you like this tier list video or this format, I actually ranked the Harry Potter movies recently, so you may want to go and watch that one next.